Do you ever feel that there's something about being a human that just doesn't feel quite right? Life seems to be going okay, but you're still looking for answers to questions like, who am I? Why am I here? And what am I supposed to do? Well, that's absolutely normal. In fact, every single human being on some level asks themselves these questions, and I can explain why we feel this way with psychology. Recently, I've been reading The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, and it's from reading this book that I've started to figure out why we ask ourselves these kinds of questions. Becker writes that, and I quote, "The essence of man is really his paradoxical nature, the fact that he is half animal and half symbolic. Man is an animal who is conscious of his animal limitation. What does it mean to be a self-conscious animal? This is the terror. To have emerged from nothing, to have a name, consciousness of self, deep inner feelings, and excruciating inner yearning for life and self-expression. And with all this, yet to die." Now, in this video, what I'm going to try and do is explain what that quote means and then find a decent solution to the weird feeling that comes with being human. The fundamental contradiction of being human is that we are an animal that needs to eat, sleep, and shit, but at the same time, we have the capacity for abstract thought, language, consciousness, morality, and self-actualization. And it's for this reason that Ernest Becker considers the human being to be half animal and half God, or half symbolic, as Becker calls it. A dog shits, eats, and sleeps, but a dog doesn't have the capacity for abstract thought. The dog is not self-conscious. That's why a dog doesn't ask any existential questions like, who am I and why am I here? The reality is that you don't want to accept the fact that you might just be a tiny fragment of the large deterministic evolutionary process. You don't want to admit that you are on Earth for a tiny fragment of infinite time in an infinite galaxy, destined to die and be food for worms. And that's where existential anxiety, or that odd feeling of being a human, comes from. But what this means for your mental health and experience of the world is that there are inherent contradictions in your motivations and your feelings. And I'll give you a real world example for this. There are times when I sit down to do some meaningful work, and then I get distracted. I pick up my phone, I end up on YouTube, and I fall into the trap of instant gratification. The symbolic, godlike part of me wants to sit down and do the meaningful work to achieve my meaningful goals. However, the animal part of me wants the dopamine hit, wants the kick of neurochemistry from scrolling on Instagram. And this conflict of interests causes anxiety. If I was just an animal, I wouldn't have the drive to pursue meaningful goals and make a positive impact on the world. But if I was just a godlike divine being, then I wouldn't get distracted from this path. There will be so many examples of how this plays out in your daily life. You want to do one thing, and yet you do another. You want to transcend your hedonistic desires and seek higher meaning in your life, but you can't get past your animalistic, impulsive limitations. That's why you question why you are here. It is so you can find an answer to this internal conflict and be secure in the idea that you aren't just a chimpanzee with a consciousness. This all sounds quite bleak, right? But there is a solution that is worth thinking about and worth applying to your life. But to explain that potential solution, we have to go to number 4, Privet Drive, to the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Harry Potter is like you and I in that he is a mortal human able to die. But he is also half god, and he is also a hero. Harry understands his nature as a mortal human, but he transcends his limitations, sacrifices his safety, and fights evil to serve the good. That is why, to overcome the fundamental existential paradox of being a human being, we have to apply what I'm calling the Potter Principle. Jesus, that's cringe. The Potter Principle is about accepting the fact that you are just a tiny particle in a large process of evolution, and accepting how, to some degree, you are cursed with self-consciousness. But despite that acceptance of an uncomfortable truth, you have to transcend your limitations and try to overcome evil in service of the good. Try to be a hero despite your animal foundations. Now, you don't have to be a magic wizard, but what you can do is try and create your own little positive dent in the world. Try to do the right things. Try to create as many positive experiences for yourself and others as you possibly can to enrich their lives. Because when it comes to the actual answers to questions like, why am I here? The only rational, pragmatic response is to think, well, I can enjoy the passing of time, and I can help others enjoy the passing of time too. And when it comes to answering bigger questions like, who am I? Well, you'll never really know the answers to that. But if you transcend your limitations, try and do the right things, try and be a force for good, then you know the answer is something reasonably positive. Thanks for watching, guys.
Did you put your name into the goblet of fire, Harry? Dumbledore asked calmly.
Harry! I protest!
Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
No, sir.